everyone, welcome back to the This Is Me podcast. I'm Karen.
And I'm Ellie, and today we have Mary joining us. Mary came from not a very promising start. She built up a successful international career and has been running her own coaching and consultancy business since 2008. Growing up in inner city Birmingham and leaving school with no qualifications and little prospects, there was no expectation that she would do much with her life. She defied the odds by leaving her home city, going back into education and training at first as a social worker and later as a management consultant. Whilst much of her success can be down to a strong character, it is also down to luck, opportunity and meeting the right people at the right time to give her a leg up. So, Mary, thank you very much for joining us today. And with that rather fascinating introduction, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you've got to where you are today?
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Karen. I'm excited to be with you today. Well, obviously, our conversation is about women of our time and our story and our journey. And on the outside, my life has been pretty charmed. Certainly very successful. I've worked, I don't know in how many countries, 20 odd countries. Worked for probably an awful lot of the big household brands and big change and transformation. But it was a very, very different life that I started with. And it was a life that had very low expectations. I was brought up in Birmingham. There's still some of that accent there, so people might be picking up. And it was to immigrant parents, Irish parents, hence the Maguire name. And they, working class the whole way, came from very poor rural backgrounds. And for them, it was keep your head down, work hard, don't make a fuss. That's how they were to be able to come into a country that wasn't their own country, and that was very much what they expected of us. And what that meant was school was something you survived, and then you got on with life, with work. And that meant that there was very little store on, working hard educationally, taking qualifications, seeing a route to higher education, further education, and then from there, social mobility. I mean, even the concept of social mobility was just not there. And it's interesting. I think when you come from low expectations like that, there's two ways you can go, I think. So you can say, I don't need to do much then. Okay, I'll get into this job in a factory, or, start this work, office work, or whatever it might be. And my parents are quite happy with that, and I'm earning enough, and eventually I'll have enough to be able to get my own place, and it's fine. Or you can say, is that all there is? Is that all there is? Or is there a little bit, if I pull the curtain of the limitations a bit further out, is there a bit more, just a bit further on that I could aim for? And I can't say that my thinking was that clear at the time, but I think that I've always had that question, is there a little bit more? And it's a lovely core question to have to go through life, because it encourages you to, first of all, live life with curiosity. And it also gives you an opportunity to really just explore without, you're not judging that the situation you're in or the people you're around are wrong or bad or whatever. You're just saying, oh, if I lean a bit further out, is there something more? And I think that question, while it probably wasn't as articulate as that when I was 16, 17, 18 and, bumming around, not doing very much at either school or college or anything else and not having a clue. I mean, I left school with no qualifications and a pretty bad school report because I was pretty rebellious. And then I went into college and did an FE, a further education course, but not just because I couldn't get the dole, I couldn't do anything else. It's like, well, I'll just do that for a year. Again, I bummed around in that. I just didn't have a clue. And what it helped me to do was really just think about, but where do I want my life to go? What do I, do I look at the parents I've got and the life they've got and say, yeah, that's great? Or do I say, actually, there's probably a little bit more, but maybe I need to be a little bit more involved in it. But it took me quite a while to mature enough to realise that I needed to be a bit more active in that process.
Can I?
What
Can
do
I
you think?
ask you a
Sorry, go on,
question?
El. Sorry,
No,
I know. Like,
no,
oh,
you
my
go
go,
on.
my go. You're go.
Look at,
I was just
no,
going.
look at us both interrupting at exactly the same point as well with the
Yeah.
question. Sorry, go on.
I think my question was going to be. You talked at the beginning about sometimes it's about your strength of character, but sometimes it's about luck, opportunity, and the right people. Like one of the things we do a lot of work with young girls at school, and a big influencer of where they end up are their school friends. So when you said that you bummed around a bit, like you were looking at what to do, what other than you, who else did you have around you that maybe made you change your mind and move forward?
Right. Well, there was that poking beyond the curtain of my current reality. And is there anything more? I made quite a momentous. I've had a few. I think if we all look back on our life, we can find, very specific crossroads, almost like a kink in our path, where we make a decision and then we go off in another direction. And for me, I had a really, really close friend at college. I had some good friends at school, but I really was bumming around. When I was earning, when in my first jobs, I would just go out drinking and socialising. There was just no sense of anything but this treadmill I was on with. And I just made this decision: if I want to change my life, I've got to move out of Birmingham. And I was 18.
Right.
And I might have been a bit older. I think I was about 20 odd. And I thought, I've got it, because I'd already moved out of the house. I moved out of my parents' house at 18 and went into a shared house. And then from there, I thought, I've got it, because I was just wrecking my head with alcohol, to be honest. And so I thought, I've got to do something else. And I just had that moment. And I've had a few of this where it's been I think I've just got to move out of Birmingham. I've just got to move out of this environment and everything that sets me on a path with a set of expectations and a set of, and an identity here. I've got to move out of it. And again, it, at that age and with the lack of any real reflection on who the hell I was, I didn't really think of it that clearly, but it was just one of those penny drop moments.
Yeah.
So I got a living residential work in a country hotel. Then I did a number of living things in different parts of the world, different parts of the country, not the world. And then I met my partner, Joy, and she was a chef in one of the hotels. And it was a mixture of moving out of Birmingham and then finding, I happened to be the love of my life. She was the controversy of my life at the time. As you can imagine, in the 80s.
I actually can't imagine. It must have been controversial.
Hairy, let me say.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you can't switch on a program without there being a lesbian couple and a kiss and things. But it was very different in the 80s, believe me. Anyway,
yeah, it was.
So, them two things together made a big shift in that path for me.
No, thank you. I was just interested. Sorry, Ellie, your go now. So...
No, I think it was of a similar sort of ilk. Is that the word that I'm looking for here? Because you'd said, about your parents, and you see often with children of parents that have immigrated, that there can be quite a lot of pressure to do better for yourself, do better than right, you've got to do better than us. But then I suppose you might have answered it, because I was going to ask, did you have that, or was it no, just keep your head down, get on with things? Was that a sort of a pressure that you felt from them?
Well, with my Edie and I hat on, I could unpack that a lot. But the medium answer, rather than the very short answer, is I think it depends on the generation that they came from. And also the culture that they came from. So what we see is where they come from, cultures like the Far East cultures and certain African cultures, and there is a real drive for the children to do better. When my parents came over in the 50s, there was a deluge of Irish immigrants here, as there was from people with the Windrush generation as well.
Yeah.
And there was a real sense of, and there was real resistance. There was a real resistance to that level of immigration. And there was a sense of being quiet, keep your head down, don't make any fuss. And
Don't
that
get
was very much
noticed.
their
Yeah.
message to us. And it wasn't, we don't want you to do well, it's just we don't want you to have more trouble than
Be
you need in your life.
noticed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you from a big family, Mary, or was there?
No, there wasn't. There was 4 of us. One of my
Right.
sisters had autism, so she was brought up in care most of her adult life. And then
That's
I
another thing
was
in the
youngest.
80s you wouldn't have known about either, would you? That it was very rare to even understand autism,
Very
wasn't it?
rare,
Then,
and
yeah,
it's very different. It was what I'd call the classic autistic, rather than more of
yeah,
the socially defined autism that we see now.
Yeah.
yeah.
So you make the decision to leave your parents' house at 18 and go off into the world, and then what? Then what happens?
Well, love has got a lot to answer for. So I think that what happened was I didn't have a stable background. So we had a really chaotic background for lots of reasons. My father was an alcoholic. My mother was highly neurotic. My dear sister, Bernie, autistic, non-verbal, high level of needs. And, you know, it was a household in constant flux. There was one, there was one
I can't
drama
really
after
imagine.
the other, one crisis after the other. So you don't get much stability living in that sort of childhood. So you either learn to cope with it and, you know, work with it, or you just implode in it. And I was just naturally quite resilient. So without losing my thread too much with that, the resilience helped me to understand that if you can cope with that sort of childhood and come through it reasonably okay. Now, I wasn't okay. There was lots of things I still had to work through, but reasonably okay, then you can cope with anything.
Yeah.
But, however, what I really hadn't had is a loving, stable background. So the chaos in me, so the way I lived my life fairly chaotically, and the drinking and the socialising, and, you know, money just used to go through my hands. There was no sense of living life. It was just experiencing life. I had to find a way of bringing that in. Now, I didn't, again, that wasn't conscious, but meeting joy, understanding that this was a long-term commitment, understanding we were serious, that brought the loving stability for then me to
lovely.
make different decisions about what else. And the what else brought me back to education. And
Right.
then bringing me back to education meant that I eventually did a social work degree. So I wasn't the first, I was the second in the family, because my older sister managed also, after a long time away from education, to get a degree. So did my brother eventually. And then from there, I went on to do another 2 master's degrees. But the education had to come round a loop, because I'd bummed out of education. And I had this view of I wasn't very clever, I wasn't very good at things, I couldn't do very much.
Yeah.
Because that had been my experience. I hadn't done much, and I hadn't experienced much, and I hadn't achieved very much. But some of that was I had to learn to behave in a different way.
Yeah. And I think when you're young as well, you don't really... you're not thinking about any of those things, are you? It's genuine. It's not even a thought that's in your head. And I always think back to when I was in uni now, and they had, I can't remember what they called them, but basically it was the older students. And I always look back at them now and I think they were there because they knew that's what they wanted to do, and they had a better appreciation for it. Whereas I was there because everyone was going to uni and everyone wanted to experience, and that's what you did next. You know what I mean? So I always think that actually taking some time away from it and deciding that is what you want to do is probably better. And then you're not in student debt for no reason, because you're there because you want to be.
Yeah.
And doing a subject that you really love.
Yeah.
You know,
and that you care about.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Sorry, go on.
We didn't get as much. We did have the student loans, but they were nowhere near as big as they are now. So the student debt wasn't that big, and it didn't take long to pay off. But the other part of it, and I think you're right, mature students often go with a different mindset.
That's the word.
This idea of a rite of passage for everyone going through secondary education is going through then the tertiary education. I'm not completely convinced about that. I think that book learning and academic learning is great, but it isn't the only way to be successful. And I think that we've moved that far too much the other way
Yeah.
than the way it is. And modern apprenticeships and things are helping to really, really balance that. But when you get to the certain, I mean, I think it was about 23, 24 when I went back. I did some O-levels again, just to have what I could prove I could do to go into a degree level course. So I did them at night class, but I was also very clear it had to lead to work, because you're already in an occupation. So you're more likely to choose a degree that is a vocational or very clearly has a vocational pathway than if you're 18 and just think, oh, I want to do the history of philosophy in ancient Rome. Because that would be really interesting. You know what I mean?
I just wanted to live in Manchester. I didn't care what I was doing. You know what I mean? I was like vaguely interested in psychology. I just wanted to live in Manchester.
I did history because at the time when I was at school, probably your era, you couldn't mix your arts and sciences.
No,
So whilst
right,
I really loved chemistry, I didn't want to do it with maths and physics. So did history, but I had to do English and economics. I mean, I did economics. I mean, and that it sets you on a path, doesn't it? I went to Leeds, those sorts of things, but I really wanted to be a physiotherapist. Anyway, I'm over it. So,
yeah, I can tell.
how did you choose social work then? Was that something that you
there
were
was a few things. So when we moved up to Hull, if you're from Hull, because there's no H in Hull. If you're from there, that's my partner Joy's place. So we decided to move back there because we were living down in the Cotswolds where I am now. I'm in Oxfordshire now. We were in that area. It's quite an expensive area to live. We both had quite low paying jobs. So we moved there. And then through a few turn of events, I ended up being in social services for that area, working in adult education centres, really. So it was when they were like day centres for adults with learning disability. And I was really interested in that because obviously my experience with my sister Bernie, I understood it. It was a world I really cared about. I'd been very involved with my sister's life, even though she'd been in care for most of her adult life. So it really spoke to me. And when I was in it, and I took it as a job, and I was getting paid for it, and it meant so much, it was so obvious to me that social work was the route I should take. Yeah. But it was almost, I fell into the job, and then I thought, oh yeah, maybe I should be doing this.
So what made you escape it then?
Well.
I mean, social work management consultancy?
Yeah. I've got there
is a bit of social work in it, isn't there?
Yeah, no, but let me share a really funny anecdote around that, about how I was far more suited to consultancy than social work. I used to love social work. I loved working in residential. I worked in field work. I worked with children and families, which is a lot of where you're dealing with more abuse cases and things, and adult social care and so on. But fairly early on, I was about halfway through my degree, and I'd be brought in for summer jobs with the different social work offices because they knew me, and I'd worked with them on a social work assistant role. So in the summer, they'd give me jobs, and one of them put me on the duty desk. Now, the duty desk is where anything can come in. It can be, there's an older person with Alzheimer's and we don't know where she is, or somebody on the child protection register has just been seen in this home and we're very concerned about. You didn't know what was coming in. And the problem we had was the social workers were always out and about. You never knew where they were. You never knew what was going on. And they just accepted this is the way it is. So I could take a message, but if they didn't come in for 3 days and it was really serious, I had to get somebody on that straight away. So I thought, well, how do we solve that? And to me, this was such an obvious solution. But honestly, we nearly had a walkout. So my solution was I went through everyone's caseload. So everyone, there was about 8 or 10 social workers in this team. And then I named them all. I put a visual card system on the wall. And in that, I did a RAG status, a red, amber, green. Again, this was unheard of in social work. And what it brought was A, complete transparency, B, real clarity about who was completely overworked with this caseload, and C, who was basically taking the piss because they were never always on home visits. They could never take any new cases. And it was up there for everyone to see.
Very brave.
Glorious technicolor. And honestly, there was nearly a walk. They were.
Oh, I bet.
And the manager who he was like, this is great, but he could not get them to adopt it and continue it. We did it while I was on. I said, don't care. I'm not having it. I don't know. I can't allocate cases. But it was the first time that, and the penny drop didn't come till later when I got into leadership of social care, where I have got two parts of the brain going in equal measure. So I'm highly empathetic, highly compassionate about people and their needs, but I'm also a systems thinker. I'm always about visual thinking, systems, performance. That was an inherent performance management system. So the two have always been there.
Yeah.
And, in some industries, they were accepted better than others. But social work wasn't ready for it then.
Oh my God, I know, I can imagine. I don't know much about it, but I can't imagine it's even really ready for it now, although I can imagine it's a different kettle of fish.
I think there's lots of retrograde steps now, and it wasn't great then, so yeah.
I had to spend quite a lot of time in certain wards in a hospital, and it used to drive me insane. And I would be trying to process improve the system, kept writing to the chief exec about, they had one of those boards up with, projects to do, and nobody looked at it. And and you can't help yourself, can you? Trying to organise it efficiently, whereas nobody in their right mind would say I was efficient. But in my head, I'm like, oh, this is all wrong. I think it comes from my retail background, if there was a queue at the checkout, she'd got it all wrong in the store. Yeah. So yeah, I do get it totally. So you progress through the ranks of social work with your charts, your red, amber, green, your walk out.
I stayed in what you call field social work for about 4 or 5 years after qualifying, but it's a pretty heavy going environment for lots of reasons, both in adult and in childcare. And I knew that my first love was learning disability, adults really. I did do some children's work, but so I went in from social work to become a manager of a range of care and respite homes in Hull. And then from there, did a lot of building up systems, really cut my teeth on learning to manage well, because these were large teams. And and all of them almost were older than me. I was about 27, 28 when I went into that. Maybe a little bit older, but not much. 28, 20, it's probably a bit older, 20, let's say 28. And a long time ago.
Not at all, Mary, not at all.
And one of them came up to me, and they'd been in the job years. They were a highly unionised team. They were really resentful of this. It was a new ownership for this care group. Lots of changes coming in, really resentful of everything that was going on. I came in with my, big shiny ideals about how we're going to do things. And I remember one of them coming up to me, and he said it all. She says, "What did your mum think about you getting this job?" He's like, "Yeah, she made me a packed lunch to come to work and told me not to be home late." It was like the mindset was there was no way I was old enough to be doing that job. But it was great. It was working with scale first, which was that one, because it was different homes in different places and lots of change going on while I was doing that. So that was great. And dealing with unions.
Still in Hull,
all of that was in Hull. And then I decided to spread my wings, and I applied for a job specifically around autism, and that was in Henley-on-Thames, and came in initially as their general manager, and then when I'd cut my teeth with them, became the CEO. And that was another very opportunistic contact I made as a result of going into the Kingwood Trust.
That's a big move from Hull, and totally different in place, Henley.
And Joy and I had to really talk about it, because obviously her family were around it. Not that she had any particular love of Hull, because she'd not lived there for many years. But it was like, we'd be going to a place we don't know. We'd be going to, again, a very expensive area. And while, there was quite a hike in pay, it wasn't so significant that it would be an easy move or anything. So we had to talk about it quite a lot. And the compromise we got in the end was we got a house not far from here, actually, in the South Cotswolds. And then I would commute every day to Henley-on-Thames, which was a nightmare of a commute. But I would do that commute. So I wasn't in Henley-on-Thames, but but I could get to
Yeah.
it and I could be in, and there was none of this hybrid working and working from home. There wasn't even bloody
Yeah.
video conferencing. I mean, we were at the very early stages, the nascent stages of the internet, which you could take an hour. You'd ask a question to Ask Jeeves or whatever.
Oh my
it
God,
was.
yeah.
An hour
Ask
later,
Jeeves.
they might come up with 3 lines that made no sense.
I once went on to a course. We used to work with Henley Leadership College.
Yeah.
And I was working in Lutterworth at the time, and I went down, and I've never been so overcome by such poshness.
Yeah.
Do you know, like
Well, that's
the
where I did my
Thames,
MBA and that beautiful White House and that.
Oh my, yeah, I was in the beautiful White House with the river, like sort of thing, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. It is a bit jaw dropping when you've come from.
Yeah, it's jaw dropping.
When I've been a snotty nosed kid from inner city Birmingham, it's like, oh my God, should I even be here?
Snotty nosed kid from Wolverhampton, exactly. You're like, oh my God, there's boats on that river.
Yeah.
So you went to Henley in Henley on Thames, and progressed really well. Yeah. So
I was there for 5 years.
I was going to say, how long were you there? Yeah.
And as much as I'd cut my teeth on leadership and management, and again, that systems thinking really came to the fore when I was with the whole care homes group. When I moved to the Kingwood Trust, I was working with a woman called Dame Stephanie Shirley, who has just passed on. The internet's been very busy with her legacy. An amazing woman. She was a technology pioneer. She'd already made her millions. She put her money into setting up the Kingwood Trust specifically for her son Giles, but as a place where there would be other people. And it was people at the much more extreme end of autism in terms of not only the classic end, not high functioning end, but also with very difficult behaviour, so very challenging to manage them. And often their only option, especially when she was looking at things, was going into secure units, secure psychiatric or secure learning disability units, and that's what had been her experience, which was just wrong, really. It was the worst thing to do, and heavily medicated people who were too challenging. And so she had this vision. She'd set up the Kingwood Trust. It had been going for a few years, but it really was staggering along, staggering along from one great idea to another. She was a natural entrepreneur. I mean, brilliant ideas, real pioneer. Her own story is really, really interesting in itself, but some of them weren't very practical. So she had this idea, she'd put her own money into buying these houses and putting stuff together. One of her ideas was to get homeless people as the carers for these people who had highly, highly specific needs. And lo and behold, that didn't work that well.
A great idea, but
brilliant idea.
Yeah.
But it's sort of it's simplified where the issues were. So when I came in, there was lots of frustration and anger from the staff. They'd been put in quite dangerous situations without any proper safeguards or thoughts about it. A lot of frustration from Steve as the founder about things weren't going well, and a lot of concern from the local authorities who were placing people at quite high fees because we were an expensive, high staffing thing. So there was an awful lot to just work out in terms of how do I make sense of this and start to grow an organisation where it can build scale, where it can have a reputation, very high quality care, and a stable trustee group that I can work with. So it was like there was an awful lot of things to do with it. And Steve herself was one of these typical mavericks, really. She'd been very successful, a brilliant, off-the-scale, intelligent person. She was a pure mathematician who created a global software development industry before it became a big thing that people did. I mean, she was quite extraordinary. But as a result of that, she wasn't used to people not jumping when she said jump.
Right.
And there was a lot of tensions with. I mean, we had huge clashes, I think if I was at all somebody who doubted myself and my abilities, I do doubt them, but not in situations like that. I do doubt them at times, or didn't have the resilience because of the type of childhood I had. I think I would have, just like everyone else that had gone before me, there'd been lots of turnover, I would have been steamrolled over. So it would either be Steve's way or no way. That would have been how it was. So I learned to very clearly meet her where she was and push back and put boundaries in. And there was an a lot of anger about that, but there was eventually a lot of acceptance about it as well. And quite nicely in her autobiography, Let It Go, she talks a little bit about that and how it did start to change. But the resistance to it was huge.
Awesome.
But in addition to having to put in really strong boundaries because of somebody who just wanted to run the whole show her way, even though she knew she couldn't run the show. So as soon as it got difficult, she'd throw it over to you. She also had huge respect. She's one of those typical people that is, I'll just say maverick rather than any negative consequences. But when you push back or when you put boundaries in or when you're really clear about what you are doing and what you expect from them, you get their respect almost immediately. So she respected me enormously and was really, really supportive as a result of that. So it didn't mean she was always easy. She wasn't, but I could say, Steve, not that now. We're not doing that now.
Set you up for your consulting then.
It did. But she also set me up for an MBA. She went, Mary, you really ought to do an MBA. Henley is just down the road. And I says, Steve, if you'll pay for it, I'll do it.
Yeah, I'm off. Yeah, thank you very much.
There's no way I could have afforded it.
No.
Even then, because we'd bought a nice house. It wasn't really expensive, but it was expensive for us. Coming from a house in Hull to here was a big move.
Yeah.
Joy was still finishing off her own social work thing. So it would have been completely out of my reach. And she went, yes, of course, we'll sort it out for you. So I got a 2-year paid MBA in Henley as a result of this person I met who was the most challenging leader I've ever worked with, but was the one who learnt me the most.
Yeah. We hear that quite a lot, don't we, on the podcast? And I have somebody like that who was the most challenging person I've worked for. But when you step away from it, you realise you have grown the most, developed the most. And actually, I also think you really believe in yourself because you've had to gain their respect, even though at the time it's hideous. So
I think boundary setting is such an important skill for people to have, and I think lots of people struggle with it. People who are classically people pleasers, I just want people to like me. I'll do whatever I need to do for them to like me. No boundaries there. But also women really struggle with boundaries. Just generally, I do a lot of work which is more specific about helping women and their success, and they really struggle with boundaries. And without boundaries, you never know which is your playing field and which is somebody else's. Yeah. And it's a real problem.
Sorry,
when you're working with women, and like you must see it a lot, what are the sort of patterns that you see that lead to that sort of like not enforcing those boundaries and that people pleasing sort of thing? What are the sort of patterns that you see in those people?
I'll give you a relatively short answer, but that could be unpacked into a very, very big answer. But I think that there's 2 or 3 things I'd point out. I think one of the things is the way we socialise girls and boys differently. There's still very strong messages that come through, and it is changing without a doubt. It's changing in society now, but there is still this thing about being a good girl, don't make a fuss, do as you're told, and boys being, they're just raucous, they're just being boys, don't worry about them. So there's a certain amount of, there's this implied expectation that you're demure and you're nice and you're helpful as a girl. And I think that is not just parents. I think if parents try and bring their children up gender neutral, and some of them do try, as soon as they get to school, as soon as they get to peer groups, as soon as they get into social media, which obviously has its own things, it starts to change. So that is some of it, is the way we socialise them differently. The second thing is around what we see as being successful, and we naturally have strong archetypes around success, leadership. People who can hold authority are masculine, and people who are supportive and nurturing and will partner with you and help you are, female traits. Now, the reality is they cross over enormously, but because they are inculcated with it, that really affects the workplace. And here's one of the ways that affects the workplace, but I'll talk about something else with it, is what we know, and there's loads of research around this, is men and women, graduates, when they go into the workplace, if they go to the same organisation with the same qualifications and the same experience, probably the same job and the same starting salary, because that's much better now. It's becoming much more transparent. Within 18 months, the male is more likely to have networked, worked out the sponsors, done all their self-promotion that they need to do, blagged the way into some of the networks that have influencers, and got their promotion. The female is going to be really head down, want to be competent, want to do a job, want to make sure that everything's right, can probably go more into perfectionism and spend too much time on the details, and believe that by having their head down and working hard, that the promotion and the opportunities will come.
Yeah.
Now, it is changing, but that still is inculcated. So if you have, in 18 months, the male is getting the first level leadership and the female is taking 2.5 to 3 years, you move up 5 years and there may be 2 further lines of leadership ahead as a male graduate to the female. So the gap becomes wider and wider. So it becomes much harder to get to them more senior positions. And that's a mixture of archetypes, how we see male and female traits, organisations and how you get into these power brokers and influence them, and also the behaviours.
Yeah.
That was a longish answer.
No, but it was good. It was really good. Yeah.
I think it's a real challenge, isn't it? The network, because it's got a label network, hasn't it? But when you look at organisations, there's like the boys' clubs, like the rugby, the football, the golf. It's not all, it's not all formal networks. It's like, and then what I've seen when we've worked with them is the male, and you're right about male graduates, their agility and like adeptness to find who the sponsors are is incredible.
Well, I was thinking as Mary was talking, I think, and this is going to sound dreadful, and I promise you, I don't mean it in a negative way whatsoever, but it's like there's something a bit delusional there, which I know that sounds really dreadful, but it's not, because if you because it works. Do you know what I mean? So if you think, oh no, I'm definitely in a position where I can go and do, where I wouldn't dream of it. I'd be like, I will never speak to this person, like, that sort of thing. Yeah. But there is a level of delusion there that really, really works in their favour, and so it's not a negative thing whatsoever because it's working, and it's how do you get comfortable, because we all know, like, there's that thing that, like, if there's a job advertised, then, like, if a woman only fits 80% of it, then she won't apply for it because she's like, well, I don't meet the criteria for the whole job. Whereas blokes don't. Again, it's that different. Maybe delusional is not the right word, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Like, yeah, absolutely. There's, and we have good data points for that, and without it going into a gender-specific conversation, but there's a few things here. The socialisation part of it is still, if our anchors are what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, are so inherently different. And I know we've got a few things going on with gender and gender politics and things, but men do go with a mindset of, I'm it.
Yeah,
I can
Why
do it.
wouldn't you want me?
We need to do more of it.
Really hard and prove to you I can do it. It's a completely different mindset, and that really does affect our outcomes long term. Now, there are women, and I was thinking about this for our conversation today. There are women who clearly are very successful and are much more masculine in their behaviour. And I was thinking, one of the bloodiest leaders we ever had in England, going back quite a way now, was a woman. When we think about Henry VIII's first daughter, Mary, the reason she was called Bloody Mary was because there was more executions, summary executions, killings done in her name than there was when her sister came in. So we know that them traits can cross over without a doubt. But generally, when we draw within the lines we're set in the main, we're seeing women don't have as good outcomes. So a lot of the work I'm doing is working on that understanding, and then what's the behaviours? How are we promoting you? How do we push you forward? within the confines of, because you were talking there, Karen, about, the boys' club and
Yeah.
the networking around things. And it's not just them, but it is them as well. It's things like, let's go for a quick pint before we leave work. And I know that's happening less now because of the way we're doing more hybrid working. But for lots of women, that wasn't an option, especially if they had other responsibilities, which an awful lot of women do. You can't go for another half hour when, the kids are being collected from school and they're still expecting you to
You're
do
the last
tea
one there.
all of the other responsibilities that are on their shoulders as well.
So what are you doing now then, Mary? Sorry, conscious of...
I was going to say we distracted, didn't we? What happened in 2008? How did we make the switch?
Where are you? And where are you today?
I started, now I've been 25 years in consulting, but Agents to Change came in 2008. It was the MBA. It was one of those things where the curtain was opened even further in terms of, wow, I wonder what's happening in that horizon over there. So I went from the Kingwood Trust straight into management consultancy, which was an interesting leap because the expectation was you go as a CEO in the charity sector, not-for-profit sector. But I just loved it. I loved the way it opened my eyes to strategy, to process, to analytics, all these tools. And it just really summed
it was you.
It
just felt like you.
Absolutely. And I did struggle for the first couple of years about, and this was because I was in some pretty toxic management consultancy firms until I found my way. Is this all there is? Is this all we do? Go in and look at a problem and say, well, we could do it this way or that way. What do you think? And let's get on with it. It's like, it felt like there's no depth to it. But then once I found my feet and got into the right places and it started being more about the people, their experiences of organisations, their experience of change, how to bring them on a journey, then it really floated my boat.
Yeah.
And then in 2008, the organisation I was with was cutting out of the UK market and wanted some of us to move to US or Trinidad, neither of which appealed to me at all. And anyone was thinking, Trinidad is a rough place. It's an oil and gas producer, and it was like,
that tells you what you need to know, doesn't it?
So
you did pique my interest when you said Trinidad. I thought, hang on, I'd have been considering that.
Tobago, Anyway, so I wasn't interested in that, and so I thought, I'm just going to go out on my own then. So it was literally from that, and then that's been a mixture of things. So COVID was a flip. So the COVID flip, not only because we're working from home and things, was more and more people were talking about diversity and inclusion and the problems, of that. We had the Me Too society movement going on, Black Lives Matter, and a number of other things. It really did bring a lot of things to the fore that hadn't been. So I started to be pulled more into diversity and inclusion work. And then I was just asked to do more female coaching programs. Yeah. And it was from that I started to go deeper into them areas. And I still do quite a bit of work in them areas. And more, I think, as I feel like I'm getting into the third phase of my life, I'm thinking I'll still carry on with them business things, the business advisory work and the coaching. But I'm more interested in healing, like real healing of people, of their soul and their traumas and, all the things that hold us down and stop us living life to the full. So I'm starting to go more into healing and hypnosis work as well now.
So what's pushed you into that element of it? Because I can see throughout your story that the drive to help people that's always been there. Do you know what I mean? That's been there from the very beginning, and you can see that. What do you think it is that's changed for you now, where you think, okay, no, I want to be doing this on a deeper level?
I think because it matters, If we think there's there's so many things about this, but I think it's because I'm switching from heart to soul in terms of where is it I'm working from. Now, what's the difference? Heart is the caring for people. Soul is that we live our life with clear purpose and that we've done no harm to anyone else in how we do that. I feel that for all of us, that's really important.
Yeah.
And while my coaching helps with some of that, and it does, but they're usually solving problems, things, I think that more the healing is for people who know when they get to the end of their life, we'll all be facing that. I'll be doing some work with people in end of life stuff as well, is that they feel that they've done the very best they can.
Yeah.
And that things they haven't had, things to carry, burdens to carry, whether that's traumas or abuses or anything else that they could have let go of. I've seen so many people had to deal with pretty horrendous things. And it's like, you know, it never goes away, but if we can let go of it, if it starts to be part of our experience, we can just suddenly be more expanded in how we live life. So if I can help one person live like that, I feel that I've done something important.
Yeah,
there's a lady
definitely.
who's been on our podcast. She's a hypnotherapist, a lady called Lisa, who I went to for, not, I won't bore people with it, but for something that was about a held fear. And she used to say to me all the time, if you've done your best, Karen, and she told me off for saying my very best, she said, you're just putting expectations on yourself. And it's a really lovely mantra that I think is amazing that you're going to work with that, which is if you've done your best, you know, that is the best. That's what you can do. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting about it is some things are unsolvable by talking about it. And actually, I think I'm a professional coach, as you know, and I think it has its place. But actually, what I really love about what you're saying is you're moving to a different level where something different's needed to help that person. So how are you going to do that then? What's your
that will be more local. Well,
method? I'm going to say method.
That will be more local practice because it will be people that I'll deal with in person. A lot of my coaching and my organisational work is online, with some travel sometimes, but not often now. But no, that will be more in person work because it's quite detailed. And just going back to that comment, Karen, about we can solve a lot by talking it through, and we can, you know, through some people reflecting, paraphrasing what they've heard, reflecting back, just bringing a little bit of challenge now and again to what they're saying so they can start to... That really is very, very valuable. But for people who maybe are experiencing things that have no explanation or no understanding, i.e. as in it's in the subconscious, it takes something different to get to that. And what we bury in our subconscious, we can bury really, 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 really deep. And I think it's a different element of work that you're trying to do.
I think it's really interesting.
No, I think it's, and I think it's right as well. There's place and space for all of that sort of. I think what I'm trying to say is there really isn't a one size fits all for any of it, and why limit yourself to what you can do to ultimately just make yourself feel better. Take the pressure off a bit.
So is that what the next 6 months looks like then for you, Mary? Like,
I think it's when I was saying about the shifts in the mode,
in the kink,
this very much feels like that. It's I was starting to feel that the work I was doing, particularly organisational work, wasn't giving me a sense of depth or a sense of service that I was looking for. And the coaching gave me some of that. I mean, I love the coaching I do and the one-to-one and team coaching. That I enjoyed, but again, I felt there's something deeper I'm looking for. And while I was going through that, I was starting to have some health issues, and I've experienced this in the past where my health started to have some problems. And it was always my soul saying to me, we're trying to speak to you here. There's something more you have to do, and you're not listening.
Yeah.
So we're going to carry on giving you these messages. For me, it was through ill health until you listen to us. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I got it.
Absolutely.
I got it the first time.
Absolute believers.
No. And this is what so I feel very called to this work.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to say like life will throw rocks at you, and if you don't listen to the rocks, it will throw the boulders, and you're just going to keep repeating scenarios and situations until you pay attention to what your body's saying to you.
Yeah. I think it's really, really, really important work. And I think particularly after the years that we've had since COVID, you know, like, and the sort of shattered world that people have been living in but haven't sort of processed yet. And I think we've got to start to be brave as a nation to understand that it isn't one size fits all. And that if you can, and I think it's interesting that if you've been through something yourself, like my yoga teacher used to say, listen to the whispers before they become screams, Karen. I didn't. That's why I was so ill. I just didn't. And I think it's interesting that this is a field where, unfortunately, most of the time you've had trauma to be able to work with it. Whereas how amazing would it be to help people for it to be proactive and preventative? And I really hope we see that, because I see a shift, unfortunately, because it's becoming evidence-based and scientific. But I think good, let it help. And I think that with what you've done, you're a trailblazer with what you've done and your background. I think it's going to be pretty awesome to watch. I'll be knocking on your door.
No, thank you. You'll be most welcome. But yeah, no, it feels like it's the right shift, and it's it's called from a different place. So I feel that that's my third phase, if you like, of life.
Yeah, no, I think it sounds great.
Before we finish, I know this is like going back again, but one of the things that Ellie and I are really starting to recognise since we've started Women of Our Time is that there's a real undone for women that are self-employed and run their own businesses. What do you think has been the biggest challenges of running your own business, and what are you most proud of? Because I think we're starting to talk to a lot of women, particularly who've like left the workplace and are setting up themselves. And I think if we can think about support for those people, I think it would be pretty awesome. So what's your biggest challenges and what are you most proud of?
The
like
biggest
a school
challenge,
test.
Yeah, the biggest challenge, and I think it's because of the nature of the work, and again, both of you know about when you're in a consultancy advisor role, is it can be a bit famine and feast.
Yeah.
And you've really got to hold the line when it's the feast bit, and it's like you've got to hold on and just have the faith that something will drop at the right time.
Yeah.
And at certain times in your life you can be fairly relaxed about that, and other times I remember it being particularly tricky not long after the financial crisis. It was a really, really tough time. So it's understanding that the very nature of working for yourself can have these ups and downs. The roller coasters can be emotional, but often they're financial. You lose a really important customer, or some supply line breaks down, or some services change, or whatever it is. But you've got to understand that it's there's no straight line to success. No matter who says it, there's no straight line to success. So it's a holding the line and keeping the faith. And then the thing I'm most proud of is, I've been working for myself since 2008.
Yeah.
And I continue to have a whole range of clients. My black book is very big now in terms of the people that we network. I'm very good at keeping long-term relationships. I can easily, get in touch with somebody I worked with 20 years ago, and we've already. So I'm very good at understanding that two-way, and that since 2008, the majority of my work has been by referral. My big contracts with big companies have been people say, "Oh, if you need that doing, bring Mary and she'll be able to help."
That's amazing. Yeah.
And I think, when you think about 2008 and what was going on there as well, to go out on your own in that environment, massive risk, wasn't it?
It didn't feel a risk.
That's 18-year-old Mary. I'm off.
Yeah.
Just look behind that curtain and I'm off. And Joy's pulling you back.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, it's amazingly impressive that you've done what you've done. It really is.
Yeah, and I think it's great to be connected with you. And because I think that the power, the energy of people like you, and when you connect energy rather than necessarily anything else, I think that's going to be amazing for change. And I think connecting that energy is really important in today's day and age. So
completely. And just being really conscious about what that, even talking about energy is really interesting. What is energy, and what is the energy we project, but that requires us to be really aware of the moment,
self-tuned,
really conscious of what's going on and how we are. And it's amazing how many people aren't. They just don't
completely. We had an incident last week in our wider family, didn't we? It was like, really?
Well, do you know what? Weirdly that you said it, I was just thinking about that, because the energy, sorry, Mary, it's so boring. And to anyone that's listening, I'll probably cut it out because it's going to be so boring. When you think about the carry-on that was Thursday, and that happened because we all came in at the same energy, do you know what I mean? And we were all it was like
a volcano of
no one was able to pull the vibration down in any way, shape, or form, were they?
No.
And this is, and then you think things like this, and you think, you're like, oh, I know how to do it. Goes out the window. Do you know what I mean?
But it's always difficult with family. I always say, they always know the points to trigger the what I call the emotional trapdoors. They know where they are. And, when they want to, they'll press them, and...
we were all doing it to each other.
Like this.
No, it's friends. Harder in them situations,
No, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. No, this has been really brilliant and really insightful. So thank you for for taking the time to talk to us, really. And the last and final question we have for you, Mary, is if you had to pick a theme song for your life, whether that be your life in general or just a specific part of it, what song would that be?
Well, there's so many beautiful songs out there, but the one that came to mind, I thought, yeah, I don't like the artist, but I love the song. So it's Robbie Williams' Angel. There must be an angel, because I've always felt that there's been a guidance around me that has really helped me, especially in the difficult moments and things. So yeah, Angel.
I thought with your
brilliant.
roots you might have picked an Ozzy Osbourne track.
Oh, no danger whatsoever. It'd be more like, was it Wizard? Who was the other one that was from Birmingham?
Wizard,
Was
yeah,
it
Slade.
more like your Wizard track than
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's been so interesting. Could have
you.
talked for ages, and definitely would love to talk to you about everything that's going on. So yeah, it was really lovely.
I know,
Thank you.
I'm like, let's just keep the recording going. We'll just sit and talk nonsense for the rest of the evening. But yeah, no, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and
thank you everyone for listening. Yeah, we'll see you next time.
You.
Bye.
Bye.